Welcome to the Pink Room, a space for real talk by real women about the real issues of our day.
As minorities, we're not only your day laborers. We're not only the ones that clean your houses or your hotels, right? We are human beings that have capacity to be part of every area of this country.
The strategy needs to be to get into these political offices.
Every election, every seat, every office.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Teresa, if I would just like to say, I don't consider myself a minority. If the world wants to see us as minorities, because we are actually the majority, but if they want to see us as minorities, then call us the super minority.
There you go. Okay. Yeah.
People started to post some microaggressions that they were experiencing from their professors.
Wow.
And hearing so many perspectives, they're like, you have to do something. If I have the resource, I'll do well as well. I'll do well just as well as others do. Don't make things easier for me. I just want the resource. That's all. And I think that's the misconception, that they think that we want handouts. We don't want handouts. We just want what the others get. That's it. Give us what you give others, and we will do just as well.
Excellent. Ashley.
As long as you can ensure that one group of people in this country have access to good education,
right,
another group does not have access to adequate education, right, you basically guarantee that the group that has less access to good education, then remain the sickest people in our system. And so you have the conflation of several policies, or the absence of policies, that basically create and sustain the perfect storm in this country.
That's not where your affluence is going to come from.
Right.
Humans fail us all the time. It is not in someone else. You can't find in someone else what you cannot find first within yourself. And what entryways were there for someone else to come in and feed you false narratives? You have to build up those fortresses first. And when I say fortresses, I don't mean walls to block people out. I mean confident within yourself to know that you can look in the mirror and say to the mirror, Latoya, you're loved. I love you. I love you. You are beautiful.
Start your watch parties. Cast the Pink Room on your HD TVs. Post your comments in the chat. This space is yours too.
Welcome to the Pink Room. The important work of advocating for women and girls requires consistent connection to your purpose. In this work, empathy, connectivity, building trust, and communal support form the foundation of this work. Our past experiences are also important markers that help us to be solid in our current identities. So in this present moment, let's take some time to reflect on who you brought in this space with you. Whether alive or deceased, who do you bring into this space? What stories do you bring? What experiences, what truths, what realities, what struggles, what pain do you bring with you? And now, using your breath, take a moment to honor the voices and stories of women and girls who you bring into this space. We invite our listening audience to do the same. As you listen with us, go ahead and type in the chat. Tell us the names of those women and girls that you bring with you here. So let's practice our breathing. As you inhale, let the breath represent the pain, the struggle, the oppression, and the weight of experiences you bring with you. Inhale.
I inhale for all the women and girls who go missing daily around the world.
I inhale Mariana Escobedo and all the mothers who are still looking for their daughters.
I inhale my mother, my mother's mother, and my mother's mother because I am their daughter.
I inhale all the women and girls who are infected by femicide.
And as you exhale, let go of the weight. It no longer controls you. Release the feeling and anticipation of hope, of victory, and of positive change. Exhale.
I exhale for policies that will guarantee that women and girls are safe all over the world.
I exhale the truth that there will be justice.
I exhale the victories won in the past and the victories that lie ahead for all women.
I exhale safe spaces to be created for women and girls.
And as you practice your breathing, let your inhale represent the weight of the journey and stories and truths of women and girls. But let your exhale release thoughts and feelings of power, of strength, of liberation, of healing. Your breath gives hope and healing, not only for you, but for the women and girls you bring into your spaces of influence. Take time to exhale.
Thank you so much, Chanel, for that grounding exercise. And we hope that going forward, we all take time to breathe and to inhale, but also to exhale. So we thank you, Chanel, for that. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. We receive it. Thank you. So at this time, we're going to change gears a little bit and we're going to introduce our guest speaker for the evening. She's really going to have a conversation with us about voter suppression. We're so excited to have her on board. I want to take the time to read a little bit of her bio so that you may become acquainted with the magnificent person that Lea Webb is. Lea Webb is an award-winning activist who has successfully bridged the gap between the community and government agencies to bring about positive and lasting change in her community. Her greatest achievement includes being elected as the first and youngest African-American representative in the Binghampton City Council. We're so excited to have her. She has 15 years of experience as a community organizer, leading efforts on various social and environmental justice issues, quality education, healthcare, access to fresh foods, and sustainable jobs. She has passed legislation supporting equal pay for women, the creation of a city-based human rights commission, establishing a citywide climate action plan, and other equity-based legislation. She is the coordinator of the U Diversity Educational Institute at Binghampton University here in New York. And this institute develops and provides diversity and inclusion trainings and programs for faculty, staff, and students at Binghampton University. She's a national trainer with Vote, Run, Lead, training women on how to run for elected office, and the co-chair and co-founder of the Black Millennial Political Convention. She's recognized as one of tomorrow's leaders by Oprah Magazine and the White House Project, and was honored with the President's Award by the Broome Tioga branch of the NAACP for her significant contributions to her community. Ladies and gentlemen, what an honor for us to have with us today, Miss Lea Webb. And
Thank you, everyone.
All honors to you, Lea. We know that your schedule is probably so very tight. So we want to make sure that we can pull all that we can from you. Our topic today is voter suppression real? So let's start with the answer to that question.
Okay. So I want to just reframe it only slightly, because we know that if it wasn't real, there wouldn't be a need to have passed or enacted voting rights laws that have been designed to protect the right to vote, right? So most recently with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act that's actually currently in Congress, as one example, right now, there's millions of Americans that have voted, but some of the experiences people have been having is very long lines, issues with their mail-in ballots, voting rights laws actually being changed in terms of, whether it's voter ID being required, just a number of issues. And so polling places being closed or reduced in terms of number. So I think, to slightly pivot it from is it real? The question is, how do we address voter suppression and voter apathy, because they both go together, where it's like, if as an organizer, I'm spending time trying to get folks to even vote, and at the same time, they're also seeing suppression happening, the two can go together. And so how do we as leaders call the thing a thing as far as like what's actually happening? And more importantly, how do we change the policies that keep reinforcing these disparities as relates to voting rights, particularly for marginalized communities, people of color, Black and Brown folks. So, yeah.
So, Lea, one of the reasons why we asked the question this way, because I know that you have seen how the current Supreme Court Justice nomination, and you've seen the questions that have been asked, and she has refused to assert that voting suppression is something that is going on in the United States. Kind of putting it out there as if people are making this up. This is not real. This is not true. So I'm glad that you're bringing the issue forward. It's something that did not occur only in the 1960s. It's very present today.
Yeah. I mean, even with the whole process, which goes back to what I said around how do we enact policies, I'll also add, how do we have leaders that are willing to enact those policies that really create equity? So I think what we're seeing with the Supreme Court, but also on several other fronts as relates to larger issues, whether it's criminal justice reform, healthcare, we're in the midst of a pandemic, right? In our communities, especially Black communities, especially with us as Black women, we are just being, ravished by, these inequitable policies. And so again, I think what we, in this current climate, what we're seeing is that there is a need to, again, not only call out what's happening, but also change the leadership as it relates to these decisions that are being made that doesn't center the voices of those that are most marginalized.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know if my co-hosts want to ask their questions. I had one quick question that I wanted to ask, that, it's voter suppression has a long history in this nation. And it is one thing for systems to be created to keep Black and Brown people out. But what are your thoughts about people who basically say to the Black community, I'm talking about Black people, celebrities, whoever they may be, don't vote because nothing is going to change. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that it's important that as we're seeing the way in which political engagement is increasing, most certainly from influencers to even from a generational standpoint. So this is the first election that Gen Zs, which is that generation, is going to be the largest population. This election, one out of every 10 Gen Z is eligible to vote in this election. So the question becomes, how do we educate ourselves around not only the issues that are impacting our communities, but ultimately how those decisions get made as it relates to those issues? So whether you are a celebrity, whether you are a grassroots leader, how do we bring both together to actualize the change that we want to see in our communities collectively?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Lea, I'm Tricia. Welcome once again to our Pink Room. It's really an honor to have you here with us tonight. I am originally, thank you. I am originally from Costa Rica, a country that has a long history of peaceful transitions of power, of the election day being an actual party, and our ex-presidents being parties to being like observers to other countries who may not have that sort of tradition and their election process. And my question to you today would be in regards to that type of initiative to come to the United States. What would be your thoughts in regards to external observers coming to witness the election process in this election in November?
So, it's interesting, right? I know that even at my university, one of the professors actually is providing credit to students to sign up to actually become poll workers. And so I think that there is power in our residents actually owning our democracy as it relates to how these different pieces come together, specifically with voting, right? So your poll workers, it's an opportunity to also receive resources as far as being paid. And at the same time, how do you, again, educate the masses around, again, what are those very necessary roles that can help to protect our democracy, specifically through the lens of voting. So I think opportunities for collaboration are key, but I think it's important that, because again, there's always this kind of insider-outsider tension around, policy and politics. And so I think what would be important is like, how do we empower those that are most impacted by these issues that are impacting our daily lives? How can we empower them to actually take even more ownership and take back their power, basically, as it relates to changing not only the narrative, but the lived experiences of those who are most marginalized.
Thank you. Lea, this is Shonda. And again, we thank you. We know your time is of the essence. And so we appreciate what you just answered, because it sort of leads into my question. And I'm just smiling because Binghampton itself is almost like a city of its own. So I can imagine what it's like to try and empower people or get them, the knowledge that they need. So my question to you is, since the government consists of people from a host of communities, right? What works best when you're trying to bridge the gap? Now you're trying to, you just said before, help people learn and understand what is going to work best, or what works best when you're bridging the gap between the community and the government, so that people feel as though their voices do matter.
It's going to sound very simple, because it is. Ask the people. You have to ask the people that you're looking to support and serve, what is it that you need, and not, prescribe what you think, right? You can't lead the people if you don't walk with the people, right? So meet people where they are. And again, as a leader, knowing some of the intricacies as it relates to governance, for an example, right? You have that knowledge, but at the same time, you are moving through a people-centered approach, but again, even more micro, centering the voices and experiences of those who are most marginalized.
Right. Thank you so much.
So Lea, I wonder, when I hear you talk about that, and we've had this discussion before, how do we get people to move past feeling that their responsibility is only voting every 4 years? And not
again, it goes back to education. Yeah, it goes back to education. Like, there's elections every year, and it's not just the presidential election. If you have issues around, how your children are being educated, that's your local school board. If you have issues as it relates to your streets, blighted properties, that's all decided by your mayor and city council. So again, it is helping folks to understand not only the issues, right, but also who are those decision makers that have direct influence over those decisions as relates to your daily lived experiences. I think that's where we have to, again, make the connections.
Would you be supportive of initiatives where government is taught in schools, but not the way with names and dates only, but that young people early on start to understand the functioning of government and how they can help to put the change, which I think is lacking in many of our curriculums or is non-existent.
Yeah, I am a big believer in we need to require Civics 101 in our schools without question, because a lot of our, for a lot of us, whether you're a millennial like myself, or even Gen Zers, and even just kind of, even with Gen X, right? A lot of these conversations around how government works, you don't really get full exposure to unless you're in college or you are involved with organizations that's what they do, right? So I think to be more intentional, it absolutely needs to be a part of the curriculum and told in its entirety, and not just through a lens that only highlights contributions of folks in the majority, right? It really tells the whole story. So if you look at things like the 1619 Project, right, in terms of talking about contributions that Blacks have made to this country, but then also how do you veer off into, so what does that look like in regards to governance? And why should that be important, or why is that relevant?
But Lea, if I may ask too, if it's not happening in our educational systems, right? I mean, I know this might slightly veer us a little bit, but whose responsibility would it be for young people, especially coming out of high schools? It's time for them to vote. Who would be responsible for helping them understand how important this process is?
Again, I go back to the decision makers, our school boards, and also our larger community. There's organizations that do this work. So I think if we work in community, both with, direct institutions of education, along with organizations that do the work, I think, too much exposure, right? I don't even say there's too much exposure. I'd say the more exposure, the better as relates to civics. So it doesn't have to just simply be confined to schools. We can also make those connections outside of schools.
Right.
That's my perspective. And also not just in terms of like formal education, but even in our actions, like actually going to vote. Like I take my nieces, nephews, I've taken them with me to go vote, even though they can't vote, but just them seeing it, helps them to even understand why it's even important. And again, it's like doing that exposure early.
Yes, I totally
so again,
agree.
there's that formal education and then like the informal through experiences. And, going back to a question you raised before about celebrity, again, if you look at what LeBron James is doing around, getting, stadiums to actually become polling places, right, where folks can go and vote, that's very empowering. So here's someone who has a significant influence that's using their platform to engage folks around the civics of, again, our democracy as relates to how can we really become even more active with respect to government and how it impacts or influences our day-to-day lives. Absolutely. I am actually getting, I'm getting a message right now about some voting stuff going on. So I could take one more question.
Sure. we allow Kayla to ask her question because we know you have to run. Kayla, you want to ask your question?
Yes, I'll be quick. Okay, so right now, hi Lea. Thank you again for joining us here. My name is Kiwa. Right now, I am in a Women in Policy program, right? And so the topic of ex-convicts and their voter rights came up. So I wanted to ask you, in some states, ex-convicts, some are allowed to vote, some are not. So what do you think about that? Do you think that those who are released from prison and jail, should they be able to vote? Does it depend on the intensity of their crime, of their offense, or should it just be, all or none or some? What are your thoughts on that?
So I'll just use the example of what's happened in Florida with the passing of Amendment 4, which again, and even reframing the narrative, right? Returning citizens as opposed to, ex-felons, right?
I like
Returning
that. I like that
citizens
term.
helps you
I
to
like that
understand,
term.
like, okay, these are folks that, again, should be engaged in, those aspects of our democracy, right? So if you look at what's happened in Florida, they passed Amendment 4, which again restored rights to those returning citizens. The politic piece came in as it relates to, okay, well, now you actually have to pay, which is kind of resembles from like a poll tax in some form, where you have to pay fees and fines in order to be able to vote. And so there have been folks, organizations that have been stepping up to actually address this disparity. So again, with a lot of policies that get passed, there's always the written policy and the unwritten, like, oh, but by the way, you're going to have to do this. And so I think it's important for us to, when you think about the ways in which like our society has grown in terms of not just simply number, but diversity of needs, it's really important that those decision makers, again, often when you factor in gerrymandering, like we're in the census moment right now, where those numbers determine not only resources, but also how electoral districts get drawn in regards to who actually gets to represent you. So I think it's important that when we raise these questions, whether it's around returning citizens, getting the right to vote, we need to take that next step to understand, okay, what does that mean as it relates to the larger picture? It's like, well, having an engaged voting community means that there's an accountability that has to be considered as it relates to how decisions get made. And that just doesn't impact people who are formerly incarcerated. That impacts everyone. Right? So, and it requires an acknowledgement that certain decisions that get made aren't always made with the centering of folks who are most impacted. So again, that's my perspective as it relates to how do we, whether regardless of the constituency, how do we ensure that the needs of those that are most marginalized are being addressed?
Right. Thank you.
Through an equity lens.
Before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for that term, returning citizens, because I think that ex-convict focuses on what they did in their past, while returning citizens focus on who they are as a person in their future.
Lea, we want to thank you so much, and thanks for that, that right on point. Want to thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully, we'll get you a longer period of time. You kind of were like a pink.
I am so sorry.
No, that's okay. We get it. You're a woman of power.
Please invite me. Please invite me back anytime. My organization, we've been doing a series for the last several weeks. We'll continue, called BMC, Black Millennial Convention Movement Mondays, where we're bringing on leaders from across the country who are actively working to ensure access to voting for Black and Brown communities. But again, thank you all so much. Keep up your great work, and let's keep fighting this good fight together.
Yes, that's right. Thank you so much, Lea. Thank you. You have a great night.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks for. We affirm her. What a beautiful person, and what great work she's doing.
Yes. Busy people are busy.
Busy people are busy. We're gonna send out the call again for people to start their watch parties. We see some of our regular, but we also see a lot of people missing. So we're gonna ask you to start your watch parties on Facebook. Share with your friends to have them join us. And we kind of turned the program upside down. So we're going to now go to what is happening in the world of women. What's in the news, right? And
Norca, could we ask those who are watching to just post a comment for us to make sure that you're here? Because I think that's part of it. We're missing you, and we want to make sure that you're actually watching.
Yes, quite a few of them are here, but we see on the numbers that some people are not here. So before we go to the world of women, I think we need to, what did Ms. Webb share with us just now that you thought, Kayla hit the point about returning citizens. I am so grateful that you did, because these people pay their debt to society.
Yeah.
And now we're charging them fees. Like, what kind of crazy thing is that? What did we take away from what she shared with us? Because I think she shared a lot she power packed her comments in a few, but she said a lot of powerful things. So is there any insight that you would like to share? And maybe those listening also, if Ms. Webb said something that really rung a bell for you, just share it with us in the chat. So let's start with the hostesses. What called your attention? What did you find made you think differently, powerful, insightful? Share with us.
Well, for me, she started out, one of the first things she said was voter suppression plus apathy, and having to work with both ends of the spectrum, and one kind of breeds the other. And we know that, but one thing actually purposefully breeds the other.
Right.
If you stop something from happening long enough, the people meant to do it stop wanting to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You lose the desire if you've been stopped so often, and we know this already from all kinds of conditioning theories and dog with bones and buzzers and electrical shocks and all of that. If you do not allow someone to do something, there comes a point where that person doesn't even try anymore. And I think that's where we've been. And it's the reason why we are where we are. So that was one of the first things she said that was confirmed by what she said.
Great point, Tricia. Really great point.
I think, and just to Tricia's point, where it's the intentionality of suppression to do exactly that. I like when she mentioned the fact that how key and important it is that people understand the civics and what the responsibility is, and it's not just up to the schools. That we, as people who know we've experienced voter suppression, who know that when we do vote, especially as women of color, that things do happen, that we need to connect, network, and engage, which is why she's not able to stay on this phone, because she's so powerful. She's out there doing what she needs to do. She's networking, she's moving. And this is the dialoguing that sometimes I think we forget to discuss. We just say, go out and vote. But we also need to say, learn more, so you understand why voting is important, not just every 4 years, but all throughout, even the smaller, the local, like she said, the school elections, your local aldermen, women, all of those things are so important. And if you understand it, then you wouldn't be waiting for others to inform you. You will already be informed of what your rights are, what you can do, and how powerful and important it is when you exercise those. So I think her saying that it's just not up to schools to educate. We have to continue to educate so that apathy does not creep in.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Kayla, you wanted to share anything that you took away?
Yes, two short things. So the first thing that I took away was when she said exposure. And I can personally relate to that, because when we were my sister and I, when we were little, my mother would take us into the booth with her, and she would, take our fingers and press the button. So, like we always had that early exposure to voting and the importance of it. And my mother, even like right now, she's texting me like, make sure you're registered. It's coming up. So I definitely took away the part about exposure, because even if our schools may not do it, we should do it, and perhaps those who we are influencing will influence others. So the exposure was one, and then the second one, to just touch on it again, was the term returning citizens. So when I was in school and I learned about disabilities, I learned about person first language, right? And so you don't say the Down syndrome boy or the autistic girl. You say the girl who has autism or the boy who has Down syndrome, right? And so that's person first, because they are a person before they are the disability that they had. Exactly.
Right.
And so with returning citizen, it kind of reminded me of the person first. Like, they are a person, they're a human being, they are coming back to society, they're coming back as a citizen. So I appreciate that so much, instead of ex-convicts returning citizens.
I love this point. I love this point, and I love that we're reframing because these are human beings.
But the thing
Exactly.
is, they weren't born somewhere else when they went to jail.
That is true too.
Right.
That is.
I mean, it shouldn't even be an issue. It shouldn't be a question,
It should-
right?
Exactly.
So the fact that there is this pipeline that takes them to jail and bypasses everything that gives them a say in their life, which is why so many end up in the pipeline.
That's right.
Because you feel like there is no hope. The only way for me to get ahead is ABC. And ABC isn't what's going to let you get ahead. It's what's going to take you to jail. So it's like this vicious, evil cycle
Right.
that will never be disturbed. And I think one of the things when you asked Norca about the celebrity, we've been talking about this. You all know I have 3 sons and I have 2 brothers. So sports are like, there's I might as well engage if I want to have a conversation. And thinking about what happened when Kaepernick, took a knee.
Yep.
And the lack of support
Yep.
from Black athletes
Yep.
when that happened, which cost him his job and livelihood,
Right.
brought us to where we are today.
That's right.
And the difference this time was the NBA decided the players, they weren't having it. They were not having it. Not just the pandemic, but the injustice.
Right.
And the entire league had to find a way to address it in a way that they wore it on their jerseys, in a way that it was on the masks, it was part of the conversation. And you see the power of sports. The fact that they couldn't no longer say shut up and dribble because there were and you see, you see the impact of celebrity used this way. I think this was a wake-up call to many that felt that this wasn't meaningful to them. I think one of the most impactful times for me was when Black athletes told their stories about being stopped by police in their neighborhood. Why are you driving that car? Why are you even here? And to be able to say the reason why I'm involved in this is because it happens to me. So having them say you need to vote, that is so meaningful. It can't be just an intellectual exercise about the civics lessons that, by the way, who's going to teach if most of the people who write the curriculum don't care about that?
Exactly.
Right? Everybody needs to be involved in making this important.
Right.
That's why.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think that's just why it's important just to reflect back on the point that Kayla brought out, that Lea brought, that being the person first. Before these athletes were athletes, they're people, and it's not just entertain us, but recognize I'm a human being and I have struggles. Which also, it was nice to hear her even reflect on the 1619 project, because people, first of all, think that that's only when Black history started, especially here in America. They forget that before we crossed those shores, we were great kings and queens. Don't let me get started. But then the other idea is that, it's just like being told that when people were slaves here in America, they came in as slaves. No, they were enslaved because they were not slaves. And so it's recognizing the people and the struggle, and realizing that when you come together, not have that mentality of entertaining or taking this pathetic view about why you shouldn't do. There's power behind who you are, who you represent, and your story, and what you can do when you come together.
Beautiful, Shonda. Absolutely. I think that for me, the part about education and the curriculum, I'm very concerned about curriculum. And listen, I don't care what curriculum, public, private, Christian, Catholic, SDA, it is lacking. Curriculum is lacking, or curriculum is weak, right? We're not preparing, sorry?
Missing.
We're not preparing our children to live first in the real world, and we're not preparing them to become real citizens of the world, right?
Wow.
So we're not. We're preparing them to believe in something unreal as to who they are and their position in this world. So we need to be very mindful of that. So it is very important. That's civics, real class. It's critical.
Yes.
But I also want to go a little further and talk about those of us who come to this country as immigrants. And we don't take the time to educate ourselves on the issues. I am glad that Kayla talked about her mother doing that. That is an educated mother.
Absolutely.
Right? We need to educate her. You cannot be in a country and try to benefit from the country, but yet still you're not civically involved and you believe that it is not something that you should be. Listen, come, become a citizen, vote. And vote in every election. You need to know and be aware of what's going on. So I think it's critical that all of us need to step up and take responsibility for it. Because truth be told, we have been lacking in responsibility as a people. I saw Brenda put a question there before. She wanted to address Ms. Webb, but she had to leave. She talked about, after seeing the number of people of color who chose not to vote in 2016 election, why were so many Black and brown people were willing to accept the message from them that they didn't have to worry about voting. Let's go even further. I was able to share with the team today, and we were not able to, we wanted to screen it, but because of time, we're kind of wondering of, and Tamar is mentioning some here. Yes, Tamar, we're going to get to that too. Okay, Tamar. So we need to look at the fact that there is proof out there, and you should go on YouTube and look for Channel 4 documentary on voter suppression. There is tangible proof that Black people, Latino people were targeted during the previous election for them not to vote. Because they sent you all this stuff on the dark screen, on the web, on social media, and they sent you all these messages about how terrible these people were. So you decided that your best bet was not to vote. And look at where we are today. And why is that? And I want to target that. Why is that specifically important? Because you have more power than you know. You have more power. Why would they want to suppress your vote? Because they know that you have power. So do not give away your power. Whatever your persuasion is, red, left, right, do not give that power away and do your civic duty and vote. So, Tricia, I saw your hand up.
Yes, I have something that's been bothering me, and I need to say it. It's this whole so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good concept. And there are so many religious people that are like on the highway fast track to heaven that they believe that not voting hastens the Lord's return. And that they do not have a responsibility, a civic responsibility, because this world is not my home. Guess what? That's not it.
That's right.
We have a responsibility to the people currently living in this world, just as much as we have it to preparing for the next world. And it is irresponsible to say that you won't vote because it doesn't matter. God is in control. I'm not saying he isn't. And God puts kings and rulers in place. I'm not saying he doesn't. But I'm also saying he works through people. And saying that you do not have a personal stake in it because you're bound for the promised land is irresponsible. Absolutely. It is so clear every time you hear, every time you read about what any Christian spiritual tenet that is grounded on what is expected of us. It's talking about widows, orphans, foreigners.
That's right.
Current language immigrants.
Right.
Why is it that you believe that you have no responsibility to what's happening in the world today? That just can't be. So it's not just the I don't care what happens to me. It's not just the my vote doesn't count. There are so many that aren't voting because they believe that they are bound for the promised land. And there are so many that are voting another way because they're using their vote to get people in place to legislate their personal religious beliefs.
Right.
So we have
Yes.
one section saying,
Right.
I don't care, and you have another section saying you're gonna do what I believe
Right.
till it touches me, and then I don't believe it anymore.
That's
and
right.
then I'll stop right there because I'm
Look,
And we
look.
we've tried to bring wisdom in this issue, talking about religious liberty. Your liberty ends if you feel that you're going to then force other people to believe and think like you, right? Because the table will turn around one day if that's the case.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
this is critical for us to, Shonda, I know you wanted to say something. This is critical for us to get very clear. Shonda.
Look, I think those views, in my opinion, because people can be indoctrinated into religions, and that I think that the patriarchy and the misogyny, those things creep in.
Supremacy.
Yes, and we buy into it because we're trying to prove so strong our Christianity and our loyalty that, and it's about, oh, just don't deal with those other issues and just focus on salvation. Yet your views of what salvation consists of and how it consists of. And so when all of those things just convolute your mind, misinformation, you have a tendency to say, I'm either going to vote this way or I'm not going to vote because I'm just focused on salvation. And I have to take order because he said this is what we do in this religion, not about the true divine purpose of what God love is all about.
Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. Let me just mention Tamar's point here. Tamar is saying, let me put it on the screen, the Caribbean better than Black American conversation is deep. Absolutely, Tamar. And that conversation often tarnishes our responsibility as immigrants. Not only come, get citizenship, be involved civically, because we feel I came to America for a better life and my goal is to get an education, get my kids educated, buy a house, whatever that might be. And we don't see it as a responsibility to contribute in otherwise to the country. So we need to cut that out. Once you come to this nation, you're part of the nation. You have to contribute to the nation. And your contribution is not just but consumerism. It's way beyond that. Anyone else before we go to our women in the world?
Blossom where you're planted. Blossom where you're planted. You go there, you build homes, you plant gardens, you marry your daughters, you marry your sons. That was the order for those going into captivity. Okay, that was what was asked of them to do. You cannot influence, you cannot win over if you're not a part of. If you truly do not feel like you belong to the community, you cannot make a difference in that community.
So powerful.
And you cannot make a difference for your children who see themselves more of that community than the community you come from.
Well,
so what about them?
Yeah.
I have one walking around here saying, I'm the only American. I'm the only North American in this house. And I'm like, oh, just wait a little bit. My 8-year-old, I'm like, But he knows where he was born.
That's right.
That's the truth. Am I going to continually refer back to home? I need to make where we live a better place, even if for him. Right. Can't do that if I feel I don't belong and I keep telling him he doesn't belong.
That's right. That's absolutely true. And I just want to share one final thing that Lorraine said here, which I think is powerful. Most people hide behind religion because they don't have an opinion. And I want to go to they don't educate themselves to have an opinion. They don't care about the issues because, as Tricia said, we're so heavenly minded. It's a placebo that we use to comfort ourselves, but it is not helpful and it is not beneficial to our communities and to ourselves. Okay, we're going into world of women, and let me see here. My screen participates with me, and in the world of women today, we want to talk a little bit about, we're going to start talking about Allison Bonilla. This is a very sad story of a young 19-year-old young woman in Costa Rica who went missing on March 4th. Recently, on October 4th, look at the time frame, an investigation took place from the time she went missing. Not only was there the government put at the behest of looking for her, but people in her community were looking. It was unusual for this young lady to go missing. And the investigation and the search found partial skeletal remains of her on October 4th, March, October, right? The story is that she was walking home from school, night school. This is a young woman who had been in school, had dropped out of school because of various circumstances. Her mother recommended to her to go back into school. And as because she works and she was an adult, she decided to go into night school. If you were to see, and we wish we could show it to you, the trek that she had to walk each night coming from school to get home. Terrifying. Dark, farmland, precipice on one side. But she did this diligently, and her mother would meet her at a certain spot. The bus would leave her at a certain spot. She had to walk a journey by herself, and then her mother would meet her at the bridge, and then they'll go home together. Look at the sacrifice to want to fulfill her dream of having an education. Think about that. The young lady goes missing. The story is now because they were able to find out someone that she knew. The last text message that she sent to her mother says, I came off the bus and there are these two guys following me. So the mother decides with the boyfriend, let's get on the motorcycle and let's go to meet her. Never met her. Last thing that they hear is a gentleman says to them, we saw that girl with two men. They were taking her on that other way, right? Now, the story is from the person who now changes his story, saying that he wasn't the person, he was pressured psychologically to confess. He said that he raped her twice that night, and then he killed her. Now, listen to how sickening this is. She knew this person, and usually women who are abused or women who go missing or killed or murdered know the person who perpetrates this upon them. She knew him. He had actually wanted to be her boyfriend at one time. She was not interested in him because he was way older. She had another boyfriend. He took the chance after seeing that she would be taking this trek, and he did this to her. Women are not safe in this world. And we've been saying that since last year, and now we're bringing it out again. Women are not safe in this world. You heard what happened to Governor Whitmer from Michigan. Women are not safe in this world as long as we believe that women are disposable and they're there to be used at the behest of men. This is what happened. So we wanted to highlight the story of Allison Bonilla, and just know that there's so many women in Latin America. Every 2 hours, a woman goes missing. Mark that. Every 2 hours, a woman or girl goes missing in Latin America. Femicide is a huge problem. And we just wanted to add that, our voices to that. I don't know if my colleagues want to share anything here. My co-hostesses, if they wanted to share anything about this case. It's just a very sad and very heart-rending case. I've been watching some of the videos, and every time I see it, it's just heartbreaking. And her mother and her grandmother going to the dump because her body was found in a dump, and not her body, partial skeletal remains, going there. I watched the video of them going and kind of speaking to her, saying, you know, we promised that we would find you. We found you. You can rest in peace. It's just heartbreaking. No mother should have to go through that.
No one.
Definitely.
No one.
I think it just.
Yeah. Go ahead, Shonda.
I think it just reflects the message that's taking place all over the world. When you have dictators, you have unruly, disrespectful leaders. You're putting out a public ad across the internet, the sky, the universe, whatever, that just as you don't respect the rights of certain people because they're marginalized, Just forget women, forget girls, children. And this is exactly what grants people permission. I mean, in knowing that they decide to do these things also at the moment, it puts the key in their back to get them revved up that it's okay, they can do these things and get away with it. They don't know we're powerful people, especially as women, and things will turn.
I forgot to add that on September 7th, in her memory and in memory of so many other women who have gone missing, these women had thousands of Costa Rican women came out. They had a march. They were all dressed in black, protesting against femicide. And more you're seeing this in Latin America, where women are coming together in great numbers and saying enough, it has to stop. And Shonda, you're right. If we hear from the high levels, you're making it okay. Women are just disposable, expendable. You can do whatever you want with them. So,
Right.
yeah.
Today on Facebook, some of my students posted a documentary on Netflix. In Spanish is Las Tres Muertes de Mariana Escobedo, the 3 deaths of Mariana Escobedo. Mariana is a woman who studied nursing, had 7 children, youngest daughter Ruby. Ruby is studying in El Paso, Texas, goes for vacation back home, meets a guy who her mother employed out of pity, who is years older than her, and ends up moving in with him. Mother does not agree with the relationship, but decides that she doesn't want to suffer her daughter's hatred, so she does not intervene. Long story short, he kills her when she's 16. He stole her when she was 13. She has a daughter. He kills her when she's 16.
Mercy.
The mother travels the entire country, gets him indicted, charged. He confesses in open court, and 3 judges, one of whom is a woman, absolve him unanimously of the crime. So the mother says, "You have killed my daughter again."
Yeah.
They let him go. He disappears. Mother finds him again. Mother finds him, not the government, not the police. Mother finds him again. He goes back in hiding. The mother she marches. She does her whole life and all of her children. They shoot the mother to death in front of the governor's house.
Wow.
And neither daughter or mother were ever brought to justice.
Wow.
And everybody knows who did both.
Wow.
And it is just so mirroring what we said before about voter suppression and voter apathy.
That's right.
There comes a moment where you have to believe your life doesn't count. If everything around you is saying it doesn't count.
That's right. That's right.
Because nothing around you is validating the fact that your life does count.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we as women, one of the judges was a woman, how can that be a unanimous vote? He confessed in the trial.
Right.
What more do you need?
Right.
If we as women do not stand up for this, if we as women do not make this our business, no one is going to.
That's right.
Exactly.
So we need to elect not only women, but wise women, because not every woman is a wise woman. I'm sorry, we have evidence of that going on right now.
Yeah, right now.
We need to make sure that women who are fighting for our interests, our safety, are where they need to be to make the decisions to make these things not okay. And that's not just a U.S. pink room issue.
That's all over.
It's a global issue.
That's right. That's right. Thank you for that, Alicia. And this is a call, really, for all women. Not only must you support these causes, but you need to vote for women and people and men who are going to make sure that there are changes in policy. Kim Griffith said something very interesting, and I'm screening it here. Enough is enough. It's very scary raising 2 young girls. Absolutely, Kim. I can definitely imagine what it must be for a mother not knowing And even though you tell them and you do all, but remember, it's not, you put the burden of the responsibility on the girl child, but it's not her really. It's them out there, right? So absolutely, thank you for that, Kim. So we're going to move to our next women in the world news, which Tricia will lead the discussion on this.
So when I saw this this news come up, I quickly shared it in the Pink Room because it spoke to me in a very personal way. Leslie Lokko is an architect. She is not a United States. She wasn't born in the United States. She was appointed as female dean for the New York City School of Architecture 10 months ago. Was actively recruited to become the dean, to actually put her name in the hat and keep her name in the hat, because there was a point where she thought that might not be such a good idea. She was convinced by one of her mentors to go ahead and continue the application process, which she did, ended up being appointed. He died because of COVID. So the one person who knew her and knew them and could serve as a bridge died. And she resigned from her position 10 months in an act that she self-described as self-preservation. And she says that she felt there were days when she felt she didn't know if she would survive to see the next day. And that the COVID pandemic was actually easier to navigate than what happened after the murder of Mr. Floyd. She said that there was a lack of meaningful support for her tenure as dean, and that she was not ready, she was not prepared for the lack of respect and empathy that she needed as a Black woman to be able to do her job. And the reason this was so personal to me was that I too became dean of a school as an immigrant in this country. I remember Norca being one of the first people I told. I too was recruited for the role. I too did not believe that it was a wise thing for me to do, because I saw what was happening. And when it's happening to you, there are so many things you ignore because you don't know, or ignore because you decide to ignore them. So there's a lot of things you don't know that are happening around you, before you, behind you, underneath you. But there's also certain things that you really don't know because you have not worked in this environment. And having to go through something like this, especially when what you're trying to bring is change, and where the institution you're going to needs the change. And that is why she took it, because she wasn't an inexperienced person who was getting in over her head. She was a founding dean of another school in South Africa at a time when change was needed. And because she had done it before and she saw what was happening here, she knew what change was needed. And she thought that everybody knew and bought into the idea that change was needed. And comes here to find out that just because change is needed and everybody knows doesn't mean you're going to be supported to be able to have what you need to have to carry out the vision of the change. And I believe that that is true of so many different scenarios that as women we have to travel in, we have to navigate, we have to try to succeed in. Just because you have a vision and you have the capacity and you have the tools, if you do not have real support,
that's right,
you cannot be successful. And what I am so proud of her, even though I don't know her personally, is that she had the presence of mind to say, my life is more important than this job. I'm out.
You know, Tricia, you have brought Leslie Lokko's story resonated, and I will tell you this, I work for the institution, not her particular institution, but for the consortium. I have heard so many women of color in meetings these past weeks talk about Leslie Lokko and how they identify themselves with her. And one of the resonating comments is that the support is lacking, but yet still we are the ones who get the work done, which is true. Listen, go to your regular institution. Look for the movers and the shakers and the ones that are doing things, and 9 times out of 10, it's a Black woman, it's a woman of color. They're the ones getting the work done. So people love to have us in positions because they feel you're gonna get the work done, our numbers are gonna look great, but the support for us, our mental health support, our let's not even go to salaries, because that's a whole other discussion right there.
Yep.
Right?
Let's not go there.
The tools that we need are lacking, are often lacking. And it is just because not only do we have, I want to say it's not only because we have a high standard and we have high ethics that we get the work done. A lot of it is that we get the work done because we realize that there are women who are coming behind like us, and we want to pave the way for them to be able to walk through. Or we're servicing people from our communities, and we want to make sure that they get the best that we can offer. But it comes at a price. It comes at a price. Burnout is real. Just the load of work is just insufferable. And it seems sometimes that you have nowhere to go or no one to say anything to, because then it's like, you can't handle the work. Then we need to look for somebody else, right?
Yeah, but let me add something to that, and that is that people believe that they're enlightened enough that they can take a Black woman boss. 1. 2, they believe that because you're a Black woman, you will always be submissive, no matter what your role.
That is true.
Wow. As long as you are in that role of submission, even if you have a leadership position, but you have a submissive role, they'll fly with you. As long as they feel that they can tell you what to do and know you'll do it, they're fine. The problem comes when either you surprise them because they didn't think you could hack it, or number 2, they see that they can't tell you what to do and you quickly run and do it.
Well,
that's when problems start. That is when the problems start.
But and I totally agree with you. The problem starts there, and I think that is one of the things that we often have to do. We have to stand and listen, draw the lines, but still the support is lacking.
Oh, absolutely. But that's why it's lacking.
The support is not there.
No, it's not going to be there because it's like you are in the king's throne room.
Exactly.
And there's a moat.
Right.
So they have the levers. And the minute you do not fall in, they pull the levers and you're down to the precipice.
Right. And think about it, Tricia. You have been in rooms, and I have been in rooms where people just want to pick your brains because they figure, man, how she gets this done? Let me get your ideas, right? And I've stopped. I refuse to go to those rooms now. I'm just like, listen, you got to pay me for that time. I have other stuff I have to do.
Yep.
But we feel many times that we're being used to get the work done because we get the work done. So I listen, I with pain, I listened to several women of color this week say how that letter brought tears to their eyes, say how they could identify with that letter. And I find it interesting. I don't know if the institution has addressed it, and I'm still waiting to hear that. And I said to a friend, listen, it's going to take courageous leadership to step out and say, listen, Leslie Lokko needs to stay, and we need to figure out what we need to get her to have. It takes courageous leadership. And unfortunately, we don't have courageous leaderships in many of these institutions. That is just the truth. We
It
don't.
hasn't been necessary, Norca.
It's what?
It hasn't been necessary. When you're a leader by route of your gender or your race or your legacy, you do not need courage. Courage comes from exercise and practice. No one gets courage without some sort of test and adversity. You haven't had to use it. If everything's been handed to you, no matter how good you are, if you haven't had to fight to get or to stay. So
Right.
you're asking the apple tree to give you oranges. If you're asking for most current leaders to be courageous.
Let me just give an example. The institution that Leslie Lokko worked for and the institution that I work for, it's very interesting. The bottom layer are black and brown, right? The middle layer, except for faculty, management, you may have some black and brown. Higher management is white and faculty, almost fully. But now you have a turnaround where the higher administration, the people who run the entire system, are now brown men. That's why I said it's going to take courage.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because exactly, because now you're up there and people are saying, all right,
the fear of a black and brown woman.
Is change gonna come with you because you identify, you know the issue. We've heard you, but it's going to take, because now you are going to have to swing against. It's going to take courage. So it's
not easy.
It's not
easy. Where's that courage come in if it's the fear of the black and brown woman, that angry or that nasty woman who's now going to come in and control me? And this is a patriotic society, world community. It's just crazy because just to even tie it in with voting, if you think about Doug Jones was a great example in Alabama. How did that man get into office? It took all of these black and brown women to say, we can do this. And they were not courageous. They were just doing what they knew that they needed to do. And I think and I mean, I'm not in the educational institution, but if you know you just have to do what you have to do, but what's pausing you is, you know,
if you are so afraid of the white lashback,
or keeping your job,
or keeping your job. I don't want to rock the boat. I'm the first to get up here. Let me try to, there's so many things that could be. I don't know. I can't judge. So I prefer to say, listen, it's going to take courageous leadership. It's really going to take courageous leadership for real change to happen. All right, so I'm going to read a couple of comments here because we've had a lit, and they're on. Love it. Let me just quickly go through some of around some of them, and some of them are going to talk about the previous thing. The voices around us tell us false narratives and we believe it. This only changes when we fight for each other. Damari said, this land, this world is not a man's world. Counted. Our
that's a James Brown. Yes, Trisha.
All right, and our Chanel supports. Then, okay, Brenda goes to, blast from 4WI history for our first road trip abroad. A beautiful 73-year-old woman stood up in front of all 300 of us, I remember this, and said that she had never heard that women don't have to accept being beat. Wow. She had been beat for 38 years by her husband. I remember that, Brenda. She had not heard a word from her aunts, her friends, nothing. Until 4RWI got there. 4RWI is in the right place. And this is the reason why we do what we do. This is the reason why we expend the energies and we invest, because we know that when women hear from other women, change begins to happen for them.
Absolutely.
So that's why we do what we do. And I think Tamar said something interesting here. She said, historically, Chanel said, women of color are being used for our minds, used for our strategy, used for our work ethic, used for our grit. Absolutely. And Tamar said, and historically used for our bodies. The list goes on. Absolutely, ladies. You are on point. You're on point. But we're going to go to our second topic, which is quite interesting, and we're sure that you guys will find it very interesting. And Kayla will lead out on this.
Hi. Okay, so the first young woman that we were going to talk about is Carolyn Giuliani, and most of you know her as Rudy Giuliani's daughter. So she used her voice and her platform to speak her mind about the upcoming election and the candidates. She used her platform to talk about how she often has opposing views from her father. And so they have opposing views on same-sex marriage, racism, sexism, welfare programs, police. And in the article, she said that I know people will focus on this article, or this article will catch readers' attention because my father's name is in this article, right? So with that, I think that she knows the power of her platform, right? She knows the power that comes with using her father's name, but that wasn't her purpose. Her purpose was to bring awareness to an urgency to her message of why she wants to vote for Biden and why she sees that Biden will be a good fit. So she sees that Biden will be a good fit as a president because he's not afraid to surround himself with people who disagree with him. She said he's willing to incorporate views of progressive movement leaders such as Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And she says in Biden, we will have someone who prioritizes civility and society and us as the movers in society. And so this was an uproar because, she was going up against her father, who has totally different presidential views than her. But she said she was willing to do so because she was tired of disagreeing with her father in private. She said now it was time to bring it to the public. And she says, she may not be able to change her father's mind. They will go back and forth all day, every day. But she does feel like together we can vote the toxic administration out of office. So it's very interesting to see, like the slide says, high profile daughters, high profile families go against each other in a time like this because of their views are so different from each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about courageous women.
There we go.
There it goes.
That's the word that came to my mind. Courageous.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And then we have another young woman. Her name is Claudia Conway. She is the daughter of, I believe, Kelly Conway.
Kellyanne.
Yes. And she, again, went out and spoke up against her mother, who is in favor of the man in office. And she has opposing views from her mother. And again, she is a high-profile personality who went up against their parents' views and said, listen, if you're a woman who is voting for the man in office or who is in support of him, I feel bad for you. She said, you must have internalized misogyny problems for wanting to support somebody who downplays and disrespects and abuses women.
Wow.
And people said that she is shaming her mother, and perhaps people feel like Caroline Giuliani is shaming her father for publicly going against her parents.
So let's sit there for a while. Are they shaming their parents? What are they doing? Listen, much respects.
I see no lies.
I think they're being truthful to what they believe.
Yeah, I don't think it's called shaming. I think the internet used that word in the uproar, right? So I personally wouldn't use the word shaming. Like you said, Norca, like they're standing up for what's right. They're standing up for what they believe in. They have different opinions than their parents, and they want to be able to vocalize their opinions of how they feel.
The interesting thing, I also think, I'm asking, what does generations play here? Is it because they're younger and this generation tends to be very vocal about issues and they see things differently? Clearly, those are strong statements. that both have made. Clearly takes a lot of courage. Is it because of the generational divide? Do you guys think that plays a role in them choosing to speak out at this point? Kayla.
I think it plays a huge role. And I have this conversation with my sister all the time. Just going back into this past May and June with all the Black Lives Matter protests, my sister and I were having a conversation. We're like, this generation is not going to keep quiet. This generation is going to go out there. They're going to fight. They're going to speak their mind. This is a different generation. This is a different time. We're using our voices. We're using the platforms that we know how to move through, and we're going to speak how we feel, and in hopes of making a change, making a difference. I definitely think the generation divide plays a huge role in it.
And kudos to this generation. You're not taking mess.
I agree.
Yeah.
Good.
I like that they are high profile, and that they're letting the world know, they're exposing that though you may see a patriarchy or a particular figure that thinks this way, it's not all of us. We don't all have that. We have the DNA, but we have a different form of it. And we're letting you know that we do hear you too, even with our privilege.
Tamar said here that before mom and dad, parents are people first with problematic views that need to be called out. Here you go. Young generation, call them out.
Can you please screen Brenda's statement?
Let me see. Brenda says, might I introduce white privilege to this conversation? They're both safe in speaking their mind. Now, this is an interesting part because I think Caroline Giuliani mentions that. She said that she acknowledged, right, Kayla, she acknowledged, listen, I come from a privileged background. I've lived she acknowledged it from the top, which to me gave me a lot of respect to keep on reading what she had to say, because she clearly said, listen, I can do this because of who I am.
Good
right?
for her.
But gone are the days, I think that many other daughters with political fathers would not have been able to do that years ago. So privilege has a part, but I also think that these ladies are taking it to the next level.
Yeah, but I think that how I understand privilege here in this context and is that what you do doesn't affect you.
Right.
It's not about how courageous you are in doing it. Is that whether it's going to affect you adversely or not. And the privilege here is you can say it and you are still going to be able to go in anywhere you want to go. You're still going to be able to have the conversations you want to have. You're still going to be able to be admitted to the college you want to go to, or have you be part of the whatever type of club. And that Malia and Sasha would not necessarily have the same sort of reception and celebration about comments they made if they were along the same lines, right? Exactly. So that's where I understand. That's how I understand
privilege.
Brenda's comment about the privilege. I do believe, though, that their statements are that much powerful because they have intimate knowledge of these people.
Right.
So they're bringing down a curtain that most of us do not have access to because of their parents' privilege. We only know what they want us to know about them. And what these daughters are doing is saying, I know them.
That's right.
I grew up in their house.
That's right.
And they're wrong.
That's right.
And I'm putting a crack in that perfect veneer where you might think that everything is perfect and everybody is in one mind because they raised us. Oh no, things aren't as perfect in my house as you may think. And that is cracking that, polished, perfect image. And they can do that, whereas other people may not. We would never know that there was discordance in the home if it wasn't for the daughter speaking out.
Yeah.
I find it interesting in both cases that these young women are very unequivocal and calling things by their name. You're using terminology like privilege, racism, misogyny,
Yes.
sexism.
Misogyny.
Girls are not beating around the bush. Privilege or not, they're hitting in the face.
Yeah.
Now, what I appreciate about it too is because there's a form of allyship to that. Privilege or not, it's good to hear that there are people at that level that recognize the foolishness and call it out for what it for what it is. So listen, courage, more power to them. If at that age they can speak up that way and see things for what they are, good for them. Lorraine said something here very important. She said that this generation is real. They call out hypocrisy and unfairness, and they call it immediately. Listen, that is so true. They have no problem telling you this is just not the right thing.
Can I say something really quick? Just to touch back on the subject of privilege, there was an incident, and I don't remember exactly what it is, so I'm not going to, come up with something that I don't know. But there was an incident where there was a young Black woman and a young white woman, and I think that the young Black woman wanted to say something or do something, and the young white woman said, "No, let me do it because they won't do anything to me." And I think that touches on privilege. She's recognizing and realizing the privilege that she has, and she knows that she's able to do things that her Black counterpart is not able to do. And I think in a way it kind of touches on allyship because you are using. It's unfortunate that the young Black woman can't use her voice without, like Tricia said, something happening to her, something affecting her, right? But the young white woman, she's using her voice, knowing the young Black woman can't, to support, to help. So that was something that reminded me.
Agreed. So our next news for today, we cannot believe, but still in the news, still calling her name, Breonna Taylor. Shonda, what's new on this case?
Yes, say her name, say her name, say her name. Breonna Taylor, we're not going to let you just fade away. And just to, I think what's so, I can't even find the right word, but because there was no video of her, much like, what's the young lady, Allison Bonilla Vasquez, there was no video. She too started in March. Her murder happened in March, the same as Allison's. And this is for all the women out there who've not been heard of. The same situations have happened. I think a lot of people keep talking about how much they're hearing about George Floyd and all these other men. They're forgetting about the Sandra Bland's and the Breonna Taylor's. And it's because hers was not recorded, which is why, and I've said it in the past, the erasure of Black women, the murders, whatever happens. But the latest, because this story is just so ridiculously twisted, is how CBS, I think it was with Gayle King, her boyfriend, fiance, Kenneth Walker, he really came forth and exposed a lot of the misconstrued or the misinformation and disinformation that has been put out there. I mean, this guy talked about how he was being charged with murder and he doesn't even know if his bullet even hit this officer. And the officer who's being charged is charged with shooting into
a wall.
A wall, exactly. And so he's just telling how he does not. He shared how he does not want her to be forgotten for who she is. The story about how the police told that when they opened the door, they were hit with a barrage of bullets. He shot one bullet. That was the first time he ever shot because he was licensed the one bullet. Who knows, that bullet could have come from that shot that officer could have been friendly fire, right? Because they were shooting. So, I mean, the amount of bullets, 16, 10, 20, whatever. It was one too many where people keep saying they didn't hear them. And he said, this is the twisted part. He's calling police, and so are all the other community members calling the police, saying there's like this whole bunch of shooting. So when he saw the police, he's thinking, okay, they're responding to me. But the response that he received was, boy, you better recognize your place. We want you. And the comment that was said to him, were you shot? And he said, no. It was like, well, unfortunately, basically, like we wanted you dead. And then this is the killer. when they went back in, because he had no clue that Breonna was dead. He was held in prison forever and forever. But there was a part of that recording where you can hear these officers, as if it was a piece of meat that they put on a grill,
Yep.
say about her, she's done.
Yep.
Cold.
Cold.
Knowing they were, I mean, so this story just can't die. I mean, the justice for Breonna, that settlement can't ever replace her. But the justice that needs to take place, they murdered her.
Yeah.
This no-knock warrant crap where they went in, it was the messed up warrant. I mean, this whole story is just a reminder of all the other stories that never get this much publicity, especially as women and women of color. Allison Bonilla Vasquez in Costa Rica, March. It's October. Yeah. Breonna Taylor, March. And still, think about one. I think they're here in excuse me, in New York City. Eleanor Bumpers, when they entered her home and killed her, she was mentally ill, and she held up a knife. Think about it. It's so many stories and out here, and because there's no video, we commend you and we appreciate you for sharing and telling the world exactly what happened.
Right. It was such a miscarriage of justice. I mean, this case is heartbreaking. I am happy that they're humanizing not only her family, but also the boyfriend. Because at one point they were saying that he had priors. He has nothing. This was the first time he shot, and he shot one bullet. One bullet. There's nothing on him. There was nothing on her either. And to me, that was also the part when she's done. They just walked over that body like it was a piece of trash on the ground. Something's got to give, and I agree with you. This case has to keep on ringing until justice is just carried. Because we cannot live any longer in a society where we're not viewed as human beings, where we're not valued, where our lives are not valued. Now imagine she was part of the EMT, because I understand that a police officer went to the house and he saw the code and he was going to put it on there like, no, that's Breonna's. He was like, she was shocked. We're not human, right? So this story needs to remain out there. I feel my heart broke when I saw the boyfriend speak about the agony of finding out that she died by watching a TV and a set. He was in jail and he saw it on the television. And they said one person died, and he figured that must have been her. The fact that he's calling the police for help and they're saying that he was trying to murder. Nobody's going to do that. Call his mother, call her mother. The neighbors are calling. Nobody's going to call the police if they're intending to kill the police. That does not make any sense whatsoever. So it just needs to be out there. And that's
asking for help.
We need to vote, people. That's another reason why we need to vote. We need to vote. Denise Miller said absolutely. She was talking about Giuliani's mother rebelled against Rudy years ago. So she has a history of not sitting down quiet. Breonna Taylor's mother is asking that we go out and vote for Breonna because she wouldn't be able to do that. Yes. And I saw that Arlene posted that we should vote for those who cannot vote. So Breonna can't vote. There are immigrants who give a lot to this nation and are undocumented, and they cannot vote, but they
even documented ones.
Even documented ones who are not citizens yet. We need to vote for the people who cannot vote. Thank you for that. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything about Breonna Taylor, the case.
It's just too sad.
It is just extremely sad. It is gut-wrenching, and every time we hear about it, it just gets worse and worse. But remember, we called it out. We told the guy to do the right thing. He was not going to have peace, and trust me, he does not have peace. This thing it just gets worse and worse every day, and I just hope that they continue to pursue justice as they should. Now we want to talk a little bit about the vice presidential debates. And why we want to bring up the vice presidential debate is because we did not have a discussion about it, because during the time we did not have Pink Room. And I'm sure that everyone has a lot of opinions on it. So we'd like to hear from each one of you. You watched the debate. What were your thoughts? How do you think Senator Kamala Harris did on that vice presidential debate?
I want to read something, so I'm looking for it.
Go ahead.
No, I'm still looking for it.
Okay.
Look, she went out there and she put the message out in terms of voting for and what needs to happen for most American people, the health care, etc. What I do know is that as a woman of color, we know she was, to a degree, I want to say, containing some of who, she could have been to this arrogant guy. I mean, he was just disgusting. He had no respect. He did it in a very manipulative, calming way, just like his boss. And so she really tried. I mean, there's some memes out there about the faces and things that she made and whatever. I think she went out there and she did what she needed to do, was deliver the message. But had she done anything else, if her head swung to the left too much or to the right, she would have been considered, this angry Black woman. And so going there, and I think I'm making that up, but she just had to go in there. And I mean, Kamala is Senator Kamala Harris is definitely, and contain.
I think Shonda is freezing.
So much. I think she did well.
Okay, go back. Go, Shonda. You froze for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just think that, she contained herself to a degree, but got the message out overall.
Right.
Yes. Just to piggyback off of what Shonda said, I did find what I was looking for. It says that as Black women, we constantly have to filter ourselves because of the fear of perpetrating the angry Black woman stereotype. And so for those who watched the debate, we all saw how Kamala kept her composure no matter how other Pence reacted to her. And I was talking to a friend about it, and she said how well Kamala did without unleashing that angry Black woman stereotype, no matter how disrespectful Pence was to her. And I said how, it's like we're not even able to show our emotions or show how we feel because we'll be labeled as angry or having an attitude. So that's the point I wanted to bring up.
So I totally agree with you, both of you. I think she did the best she could with what she was handed. Part of it, as we know, because they still did it. They still did it. They still did it. They still said that she was aggressive, that she was disrespectful. They still did it. My favorite parts were when she definitely said, "Listen, I'm speaking now." And when she said to him, "You're not going to lecture me on my record," and she actually made the moderator give her more time because he just spoke lies about my record. I'm going to clear that up. But clearly, to me, she was a foot and more taller than him in so many things. He never answered questions. None of the questions that he was asked, he answered directly. There was this sanctimonious tone that was driving me crazy. This very
condescending.
I did not buy it for a minute. I think it was all a game. And I think that she, on the issues, she could spout out stats, spout the issues. We did not get that on the other side. What we got was a lot of lies. Some women were complaining. They felt that she should have gone up there. I think she, a very wise woman that she is, she did exactly what needed to be done for that time. She measured it within what she had to do. She did the job, and that's it. Do I feel that this changes people's views either way or the other? No. And I'm gonna. We have a theory in my house that the undecided are really not undecided. People who want to be catered to, and everybody. Oh, did you finally decide who you're gonna go? And they're always on it. They already know who they're gonna go for, so they're not undecided. So I think she did what she had to do. She got the job done. That's it.
I will say this though, we're hearing a lot more from her.
Just like the fly. Yeah.
We're hearing a lot more from her now than before the debate. Before the debate, it was the Joe Biden show with Harris just as a name on the sticker. She wasn't visible. She wasn't audible. You just knew it was Biden. After the debate, I've seen a lot more commercials with Kamala, talking about who we are. So even the one that says, this country is not about us versus them, it's about we the people. There's been a lot more emphasis in bringing her to the forefront because frankly, it was the one time that issues were discussed and we could actually learn what this election is really about.
From her part.
And when she did the whole, they're coming for you, one after the other, there were some moments. And when she said they're coming for you, right? If you have this, if you have this, if you have this, they're coming for you. That is so immediately, that is so smart because what you're doing is putting the person in the argument. If you are 26, they're coming for you. Check all the 26 years old. If you have a pre-existing condition, they're coming for you. Check all the millions with pre-existing conditions.
And COVID.
Yep. So it no longer is about them. It's about you. They're coming for you.
That's right.
She was very smart in the way she did it. And I don't think that people are used to, and that's why this was smart, in my opinion. The beauty of her not doing the stereotypical angry Black women that gets me so upset whenever I hear it is not necessarily just not being about the stereotype, but people that are used to that description had to lean in to listen. They did not have an immediate reason to tune her out. They did not have an immediate reason to say, oh, I don't have to listen to her because she's not even rational.
Exactly.
They had to listen to her. They had to pay attention because because of that, she was impactful. Did it change anybody's mind? I'm not sure it did. But even people who are against the Democrats,
they had to listen.
Agreed.
They had to listen for sure.
I agree. I tell you, just like the fly had to land and just listen to the crap that was coming from out of his mouth. So I mean, really, that was
land and stay.
And let's sit in the fact that Black women always have to edit themselves. We have to edit what we say. We have to edit how we say it. We have to edit our eyes because they can't roll too much. We have to edit our neck. We have to be we're constantly editorialized, right? Which again, clearly not only patriarchy, but supremacy. I am working very hard to disrupt those notions by just being myself. I used to spend a lot of time editing myself. Long before this, I stopped. This is who I am. This is what it is. If you don't like it, close your eyes, whatever. But you need to learn to accept the same way I have to accept you the way you are. This is what I bring to the table. I'm passionate about things. I say things effusively. I move my hands. This is who I am. And I think that we need to start chopping away because I think we wanted to fit into this box because if not, then we're not going to get the promotion. Tokenism, right? If not, then we're not going to. At this point, and maybe because of my age, I really don't care. This is who it is. I do not plan to spend the rest of my life editorializing myself. and I love the talking points that she's given me. I'm speaking, and I will not be lectured.
Yeah.
And I've used them already. So if we need to seize the power, she opened the door. Let's grab a hold of these things and let's walk in our own true self.
Let me say something briefly. It happened to me this week, and I'm piggybacking on what you just said, Norca. I'm finding that the best way to do this is with honesty.
Yeah.
So I'm having conversations where I work, leading the entire organization through a process of addressing systemic racism in everything we do. And I have divided it into smaller groups so that I can look people in the eye when I'm talking about this. And somebody said, are you going to bring in anybody to talk about microaggressions, implicit bias, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, I'm not. I said, because that's not being known to be the most effective way, even though it's the most popular way.
Yep.
So this person came back to me in a little bit of a passive aggressive notion to say, well, I just wanted to say it, but since clearly there's no interest, I said, okay, stop. I didn't say that. I said it is not the most effective way, though it is the most popular. I said there are literally books written on microaggression, on implicit bias, and all the things you talked about. I said, I had to learn how to work in your world. Nobody paid for me to get training to know how to survive this country and grow in academia. So you know what you need to go do? You need to go read. And just the same way, we have had to learn how to do it to grow. It's time for you to pick up your book and learn.
Love it, Tricia.
I'm done. I think that
this is a new talking point. You're absolutely right. We've had to assimilate, fit in. Yeah, you need to go learn now.
I had to do it. Nobody
and
paid
that stuff
anybody.
is stressful.
It is.
It's so
stressful to minimize yourself. Yeah, and who you are. Look, Frank Lou Hamer said it. You know
what ends up happening?
And she told her sharecropping. I'm sorry, I think I'm delayed.
Yes, you're a little bit delayed. You know why this is so problematic? Not only Chanel put that, can we be ourselves, right? But you know what ends up happening? And it circles back to comments I think Tricia made before. You end up really being silenced.
Yes.
You silence yourself in these rooms because you are so focused on how do I say this without moving my hands, without speaking too loudly, without making sure that I can effuse away. Listen. And that doesn't do justice to why you're there. It doesn't do justice to who you are. And you can no longer do that. So we can no longer play into that game of allowing ourselves to be editorialized by other people. Yes, we had to learn it. They should learn it too. Absolutely. Love it. No more assimilation. No more assimilation. And we want to go to our next, our final person, that final woman in the news that we want to talk about.
Oh my goodness.
She's a final woman.
So here are a couple of things that are being problematic with, I'm breathing, with Judge Amy Coney Barrett. You have alumni in the thousands saying she needs to step away. You have people that work with her, colleagues saying she needs to step away. You had thousands of women marching today in several major cities saying she needs to step away. Her positions are highly problematic. And at 48 years old with a lifetime appointment, this is kind of turning back the clock on all the gains that this country has made because of this person's personal positions. This is so problematic. And some people are saying, it is what it is. She's going to be the person. So people are now appealing to her to say, listen, step out, step away.
You think she's gonna step away? I don't think she's gonna step away.
I don't know if she's going to step away. I think she believes. You know what I honestly believe? I think she believes she's the chosen. She believes.
She's the chosen.
No, but I mean, she believes God has her.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Right. She believes that God has her. And
she's the chosen. She's just not chosen by who she thinks she's chosen.
There we go.
But she's the chosen.
There we go. I believe she honestly believes that, and in her Christian tradition, I'm sure they're praying and fasting, and all of that is happening for her. But it is unfair for a person with those views. And again, as we said, it's not her religion, it's her personal views. If you get asked by several persons who are questioning, several senators, about your views on voter suppression, and you cannot say with a certainty that voter suppression occurs in this country, when there's more than proven data, there's more than evidence that this happens, you're never going to legislate against people who are suppressing votes.
Can I ask like a simple question?
Sure.
Isn't the job of Supreme Court justices to give an opinion?
That's what everyone says.
Then why is it that she cannot give an opinion? This is like the basic job interview. Give an opinion, and she says, "Sorry, I cannot give an opinion."
I mean, look at what Donald Trump is doing. Look at what Mike Pence is doing. They are not answering questions. So why should she? Why should she give an opinion?
Because she's in her job interview. They already got their job. And they're just trying to keep their job.
Why?
She's just trying to get her job. And you're telling the person who's interviewing you for your job, I'm not going to answer your question.
There's just something so nefarious about this whole thing that bothers me. Not only the fact that they bullied their way through to have this happen, but the fact that now you have an entire nation on the heels of being stressed, and people are really stressed about this, very concerned about the future of a nation, and it's laying on the shoulders of this one person. This cannot be good. The lifetime appointments, there's just so much to be questioned here. There's so much to be questioned. I don't know about my co-host. I don't know what else you have to say.
You know that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink?
Right.
Kamala Harris was leading that horse to water. And the horse, every step of the way, was saying, I don't know which water you're trying to lead me to, but. And she made it, Kamala made it such a way that she could not answer the questions.
Right.
So she knew there was an intent, but there was no way she could not answer the questions she was being asked.
Right.
So for her not answering the last question on the list was the answer.
Right.
She didn't have to say it.
Kamala Harris is extremely smart. That woman she parsed it out. And also know that her line of questioning allowed her to bring the cases to the forefront, yes, where she has not been fair. Talking about against laborers, always for big organ. And you could see on Judge Barrett's face that she was very discomforted, uncomfortable by the line of questioning, because this woman was really reading out, you have turned against these particular cases. So the evidence is overwhelming. This is not good. Denise says that as a justice, her opinion has to be governed by the rule of law. We have seen more conservative justices moderate because of the rule of law. Denise has hope. I'm glad you do, Denise. I'm concerned. I'm really concerned. I don't know. This doesn't.
The law is changing.
The law is changing, and this is why we need to vote.
The law is changing. The rule of law changes when the law changes.
So we're going to really go into and we don't have a slide for you today, but we're going to go into our final must-do to-do list. This is where we do our self-care. If you were here earlier, you saw that Chanel led out in a grounding exercise. We're going to try to incorporate this some more, because with all that is happening, we need to be able to center ourselves in the purpose of the work that we do. And when we say this, this is not just for Real Women as an organization, but all of us as women, all of us. And then also bring to life some of the things that we are working towards making change. So we're going to start with our must-do to-do list. And we're starting with Tricia.
So mine is vote. And I want to divide that into two parts. Number one, the obvious one, which is vote. Whichever way, it's like the song. Voicemail, snail mail, plane, whatever you have to do, vote. And whatever it is you need to feel confident that your vote will count, do that. But you need to vote. That is the most evident way of defining vote as something that we must do. Time is running out. If you're trying to vote by mail or absentee ballot, you need to get on it. You need to find out the deadlines in your state. You need to find where those ballot boxes are, especially in those states where they've been removed. I will not go so far as to say what you need to vote for. You should know by now what your vote, how important your vote is. But I want to kind of flesh that out a little bit more in a way that is not how traditionally we talk about vote, and that is social media. Whatever you put on your page is not only what you put on your page, but whatever acquaintances or friends you have whose pages you visit also gets on your feed. And I am trying to be very intentional about what I allow on my page. It's not about me not being able to read dissenting opinions or not wanting to hear what other people have to say. What I refuse to do is to give people platforms for free on my platform. So I am snoozing, hiding, blocking, and responding to opinions that I believe do not represent my own voice. So I really encourage you to be mindful about what you're saying, not only by what you're saying, but by what people on your page are able to say using your own platform. So vote, as in vote for the election, but also be careful about the messages that you give, because you are sponsoring, you're endorsing whatever is apparent in your social media. So vote.
This is such a good point that we can be endorsing, and our silence also endorses. Thank you so much for that, Tricia. Awesome point. Shonda.
Yes. So Tricia, you segued right into my next piece. Ignore the misinformation that's out there. As Lea Webb shared earlier in 2016, that we know, and I think actually Norca may have brought it to our attention, the documentary on NBC, that in 2016, the how Black and brown people were targeted, and primarily targeted not to vote. And there was a reason, because they were receiving misinformation as to why. Again, your vote is powerful. If it were not powerful, there would not be suppression, or you may not be forced into the apathy. So ignore the misinformation. Do your research. If you don't know, search to send you into the universe so that you can't vote. You need to vote now more than ever. That information is leading you. The things that some of our celebrities are saying, it's misinformation. Speak to civic leaders and civic organizations that can guide you with facts, and don't engage with it. When someone says something to you that you know is just, to the moon and back, don't engage. You just go out and do what you're supposed to do. As Trisha said, vote.
Shonda, this is such a good point. And you know why? Because people tend to listen to celebrities so much, and not all of them are necessarily purveyors of wisdom. So what you're saying, go to the people who know what it is about, and block. I've blocked a lot of stuff on my YouTube. I don't want you to give that information to me, because actually some of it is a kind of a brainwash. Mm-hmm. So good point. Good point. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Kayla, you're next.
Yes, do your research. And it's perfect that I'm going after Shonda, where she was talking about ignoring misinformation. And I'm talking about do your research. Do your research on the candidates, whether it's local elections, presidential elections. Do your research. Research the candidates. Research their political stances, their history. Do your research. There's a plethora of information out there for all of us that we have access to, whether they're books or articles. Do your research so that you are informed about the upcoming elections with the right information. And also do your research about polling booths. Do your research about absentee ballots. Do your research about the voting rules in your state, in your town. For example, a lot of us were displaced because of the pandemic. So my sister, for example, she was a resident of Massachusetts, Boston. But, with the pandemic, she had to come back home to Pennsylvania. And so she had to do her research and, with her absentee ballot and the Pennsylvania rules and regulations for voting. And, this applies to many of us who were, misplaced or displaced or, not in where we are originally registered. So do your research so that you can be an active voter. It is your civic duty, it's our civic duty. So do your research.
Oh, I love that, Kayla, because yes, people have been misplaced, and that's another factor where people can end up not voting.
Exactly.
Yeah, and all those college students who are now coming back home, thinking about them in the hundreds. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Such a great point. Thank you so much for that. And I want to end by asking you to make a plan, whether it's absentee ballot or you're going in person. Make a plan, prepare yourself for vote, and execute. This may mean that you need to find out where you're going to drop that vote if it's absentee, or if you're going to vote in person. If the lines are long, what are you going to do? Do what Michelle Obama said, pack a lunch, take a little folding chair with you, whatever you need to do to make sure that you are prepared and that you can vote without having to leave the line and come back or not vote. There's going to be a ton of things out there trying to discourage you. Make a plan, prepare, and execute your plan. And I'm going to bring on my co-hosts with me now, and we're just going to read a couple more of comments as we close for today. We want to thank you as usual. You could have chosen anything else, but you chose to be on the Pink Room. And for that, we are infinitely grateful. Lorraine, she supports Shonda's point. Damari said the research, educated and well-informed voter makes a good voter. Thanks, Kayla. Yes, Kayla, it is important to educate ourselves regarding the candidates and voting. Absolutely. Great points. Ladies from Tamar, have a plan B as well. What happens if you cannot do that one thing? What's your plan B? But make sure that you get to vote that day. Make sure your mail-in ballot is correct. Yes, thank you very much for that, Brenda. Make sure you read that carefully. You fill in the bubbles. Sign where you need to sign. Put postage on. Some states require you to have a witness, and the witness must sign. Whatever needs to be done, read it carefully, and don't wait until the last minute to do these things. Make a plan, work the plan. Plan B, vote as well. Thank you very much for being with us. It's been always exciting to be with you. We hope to continue the conversation. We're so sorry that Miss Webb had to leave, but the wisdom that she deposited was enough to get us going. And in this instance, we want to thank her for the time, and we hope to be able to invite her once again. Ladies and those gentlemen who follow us, we thank you, and we just want to say good.
Have a good week.
Have a good
Bye.
week.
Well,
And we'll see you next time in the Pink Room.
The Pink Room is a produced resource of For Real Women International, Inc., a non-profit organization with headquarters in New York and affiliates in the United States, Latin America, and the Caribbean. The views expressed here by hostesses and guests do not necessarily represent the philosophy of For Real Women International, its affiliates, members, and board of directors.